Do not Google search the name that I will be revealing towards the end of today's video without exercising extreme caution. The Google searches brought up by that name are not safe for the viewership of children. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get into today's story. In a beautiful moonlit night out in Utah, a young couple were enjoying their first date out on the town. It had gone like most other first dates, that slight awkwardness at the beginning, but after a while, the young couple were starting to hit it off really well. In fact, they started to behave like they were the best of friends, and it was a very rich connection going on. And as the night was starting to draw towards its natural ending, they both had that feeling of not wanting it to end so soon. They were enjoying their time so much together. And so, after parking the car outside of her place and sitting down together and trading some laughter, the young man would turn over to the girl and he would spontaneously mention out of the blue and say, "Hey, I know this really cool hiking spot, and I know it's late at night, but it's beautiful. The stars are out, the moonlight's out. We can see our way around up there. I go there all the time. I would love to share this trail with you. Would you be interested in going with me?" And the young girl at first, she's like, "Oh, it's late. I barely know this guy. It's kind of a weird situation. Maybe I should think about this for a while." And then, she kind of thinks to herself, she looks him over one more time, and then she realizes, hey, this guy's a local rock climber. She knew that he was an avid hiker, and he probably really loved this trail, and she wanted to make a good impression. She didn't want to turn him down like this. So she agreed. She said, "Sure, I'd love to go there." So with a big grin on his face, he turns the car around and he starts his journey towards that trail. And he looks to her and he would say, "You're going to love this trail. It's called Provo Canyon, and it's only a few minutes away from here." After a while, they were off the highways and on an access road leading to the trail, and it had pine trees on both sides. The pine trees were really dense and dark and wooded, but you could see over the top of them as you were driving, and you could see a clear, moonlit, starry sky. Suddenly, off to the right, the tree line opened up into a small valley and clearing, and that's when he pulled the car over and parked it. Once the headlights were off and the engine was shut off, they stepped out, and their eyes had to adjust to the surrounding darkness, but then they quickly realized that in this clearing there was so much moonlight that they could see their way fairly well and avoid tripping over objects or anything like that. So he finds a specific trail that he's looking for, and he points down it and he says, "Yep, this is the one. Let's go down here." And while they're walking down there, about 100 meters ahead of them on this trail, as it starts to turn a snake in the path, as it turns that snake in the path, there's a big heavy forestation leaning over the top of the trail. So the moonlight kind of stops before they get to that spot, and that spot is relatively dark. So they kind of have to go through the darkness a little bit and risk stumbling over things as they continue down the trail to get to the specific spot he wanted to take her. So about 100 meters down, they make their way down there. But with every step they're taking, she's starting to feel the fear approach. And she's starting to feel uneasy, and there's this eerie feeling in the air, and it seems to be getting heavier and heavier with every step forward that she takes. She can't really put her finger on it. She can't really fix what it is, but she doesn't want to sound like a fraidy cat. She doesn't want to sound like she's not up for the task. She wants to make a good impression. And after all, he is an experienced hiker. He's come out here at nighttime all the time before, and he's a rock climber. He knows his stuff, so she's going to follow him. He hasn't mentioned anything, but he's been staying kind of quiet too, and they're walking down the trail. The trail starts to become just a little bit more uncleared, and there's more brush and there's more weeds in their way, so they're kind of having to lift their legs a little more. As they're starting to get close to that little edge of the forest right there that's kind of covered over into a canopy, and it's dark in there, and she sees him go in, and he takes a step forward, and it's kind of dark. They kind of have to strain their eyes to see their way because it's a little darker and it's shaded over by the trees. Then suddenly he just stops dead in his tracks, and all she can see is the back of his head. And he just stops and he takes another step forward and kind of stumbles a little bit, and then after he stumbles, he kind of stops and then turns around, looks at her, and his eyes are just wide. They're wide, like he saw a ghost. And he looks really afraid, really startled. And she looks at him, she's like, "Well, what is it? What went on?" And in a low voice, he just tells her, "Look, I changed my mind. Let's just turn around. Let's just walk back. I don't want to do this anymore. Let's just walk back." So they turn heel, they're both feeling it, and they start walking. By the time they make it back to the car, they're almost at a full sprint. They hop in the car, they turn on the engine, the headlights come on, and they turn out of there. And as they're cutting down this road to get out of there, he turns to her and he says, "Hey, I know that was really weird. I know it was kind of out of nowhere. I'm really so sorry about that." And she says, "Wait a second, what was that? Why did you stop? Why did you stumble? Why did you look at me like that? What was that in your eye? What is it that you saw?" And he turns to her and he said, "Hey, I didn't want to say anything, but I just started to feel really, really like a sense of eeriness and a heavy, dark feeling. And when we got into that little dark spot out there in the forest, I didn't want to say anything. I just wanted to push through it. But when I took 2 steps in and I stepped on something soft. It felt really, really weird. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a dead animal, but I just had this really strong feeling that we just needed to get the hell out of there. And so when she hears this, she says, I had that feeling too. I felt super afraid. I started to feel really weird in there. It didn't feel right at all. It felt super dark. And so they're both shaken up about this. They don't know how to feel about it. But after a couple of minutes of driving back towards the direction of town, they kind of start to loosen up and relax, and they start to giggle about it. And pretty soon they're back to tossing jokes back and forth, and everything seems to be all right. Once back in town, they kind of settled for a bit, and after trading a couple of laughs, they started to feel stupid for even going out there at that time of night, and they just chalked it all up to childish fear of the dark. But after trading a few more laughs and comments, they agreed on a second date. Many years later, that very same couple would actually end up happily married, and one evening, while enjoying their time together on the weekend, they were watching TV and they stumbled on a true crime documentary. And what they would see in this true crime documentary would terrify them. It would turn out that what they were seeing was an interview with one of America's most infamous, well-known serial killers. And this serial killer was asked a question by the interviewer saying, "When was a time that you almost got caught but didn't?" And the serial killer would reply, and he would mention about a time where he had just killed somebody and he had the body with him in the woods of Provo Canyon. And a random couple came hiking over to where he was, and so he hid just a couple meters away from them, and they couldn't see him, but they ended up stepping into the darkness and stepping right on top of the body of his murdered victim. And then after doing that, they would just turn around and take off, and he wouldn't see him again. That serial killer's name was Ted Bundy. Alright, that's going to do it for today's short story. If you like stories like this based on real life accounts and events, if you like dark, creepy stories based on real life, that is all I do here, and I try to upload as many times as possible throughout the week. Please subscribe. I love to read story recommendations in the comments, so if you have any good recommendations for me, please go ahead and put them down in the comments. Also, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of my recent uploads. Blessings.